Welcome back here to MightyMack on YouTube. We have wrapped up the inaugural running of the PRO Superstar Shootout down in Bradenton, Florida, and we have found out who will be taking home the $1.3 million purse and how does the series look as it heads into the opening round of Gainesville in about a month's time. All that as we cover tonight's event. Let's get into the video. So we start off tonight's event recapping a bit of what happened today. Overall, general notes that I have. In round one, the track conditions seemed very tricky. In all three classes, cars struggled to get down both lanes. In Top Fuel and Funny Car, only one car each basically made it down the lanes, and it was the two cars that I might not have expected going into this race. Clay Millican was the first one in Top Fuel, had a really consistent run down the track, when in reality, running in the heat is not the strong suit that Clay Millican has had. It has been his Achilles heel. While he's been very strong in these colder conditions when the moon's out and the lights are on, he seems to be really fast. But when you're in the heat of the day and the sun's shining right on the racetrack, it just doesn't seem like that car can get down the racetrack. And that has been something that they have been fighting all throughout the season, even the past two seasons. They just got Nicky Bonifani on that car, and it looks like they're starting to turn a corner because he was the only car in the Top Fuel class that made it down the track cleanly, ran a 330-mile-an-hour pass, and looked equally strong in the semifinal round. The other person, Bob Tasca, in the two rounds of qualifying that took place during the daytime, he also struggled to get down the track. He told the Flow Racing people that while the car might have not made down there, he wasn't too focused on that. He was focused on going 340 miles an hour in the night and was confident that the guys could figure out what the problem was and get that car down the racetrack, and he certainly did. Those two, without a doubt, were probably some of the strongest competitors in the class today in their respective categories, and they were the people to beat, and rightfully so. And going into the season, they seem to be very strong competitors for the championships in the Top Fuel and Funny Car divisions. Other ones I want to say is the track did come together by the time the semifinal rounds came around. By the time the sun started to set and the lights came on and the track started to cool off, it really started to come into its own. We saw some very close head-to-head racing throughout the event. And I want to give a shout out to the track crews, because while yes, there were some big delays that in comparison to what we see from NHRA isn't really what you want to see. But when those cars were on the track, it was some of the best racing that we saw all weekend, especially in that No Bull Showdown event that they ran. That's not what they called it, but the Top Fuel versus Funny Car event that they ran towards the end of the afternoon. Another one is incredible fan turnout all weekend long. They packed it, especially today. They filled up the parking lot, they filled up the overflow parking lot, and then went to the overflow parking lot and filled that too. So it was an absolutely packed sardines, shoulder to shoulder, wandering the pits. Everybody was crowding that place. I want to give a huge shout out to the promoters of the event at Bradenton Motorsports Park, as well as Flow Racing and Drag Illustrated and the PRO and everybody involved. This weekend was huge for drag racing, and it is really the perfect way to kick off the season. Again, I still stand by what I said last night about some of the criticisms thrown towards NHRA. I still do feel that some of it isn't very warranted and not in the right place. But I cannot ignore the fact that the work that has been done throughout the past year to get this event ready absolutely paid off, and it is absolutely the perfect way to kick off, and I cannot wait to see how this translates into towards the NHRA season, especially with the fact that the Gator Nationals is coming up in about a month's time. Like I said, really optimistic start to 2024. I don't know how you can be with the racing that we saw today, with the fan turnout, with the excitement, and the fact that we saw the record-breaking 341 speed. Again, really optimistic for 2024. Let's get into the brackets and then get some closing thoughts on this event. In Pro Stock, again, what else can you say about Erica Enders? An absolutely incredible performance for her. She absolutely dominated this event. Went through round number one facing off against David Quadra, took down Aaron Stanfield in a very deja vu run. If you remember back from 2022, if you're following me along on Twitter, I even pointed it out. A very deja vu run from the 2022 Bristol final in the exact same lanes that car was in. Well, for them it was swapped, but the exact same turnout. The car that was in the right lane, which was in this run, Aaron Stanfield, had an issue with the engine. Car had smoke coming out of the back, and whoever was in the left lane went and ran away with the race, ended up winning the event. Eric Anders made it to the semifinals, faced off against Jag Coughlin Jr., who had an incredible debut, or I guess I should say return to Pro Stock racing in that Jag's, I'm gonna get used to that, Skag Power Equipment Pro Stock Camaro. ran through all the way to the semifinals, having to go through Jerry Tucker, having to go through Christian Quadra, and then falls just short of beating Erica Enders. Erica makes it to the final and gets another returning driver, Dave Connolly. Round number 1, faced off against Dallas Glenn. Dallas red lights, goes in round number 2 against Matt Harford. Matt Harford squares the tires just past the tree, then ends up beating Chris McGahey in the semifinal round and gets in the final round for $125,000. Again, what else can you say? KB versus Elite Motorsports, the story of like the past decade almost, I want to say, and it comes down to an elite car, which is absolutely fitting considering the fact that Richard Freeman is one of the big spearheaders about getting this event off the ground with the PRO and Drag Illustrated and getting it done. So it just seems right that he's taking home some of the money this weekend. Other notes I have, like I said, Troy Colvin Jr. squared the tires. A major red light from Greg Anderson in round number 1. He had a .09 red light, very uncharacteristic of Greg Anderson, who had just an uncharacteristic weekend. Qualified around 15th, if I'm correct, going into this event, and just could not have this figured out. And going into Gainesville, it looks like that car is going to have a lot to work on, considering the same gremlins they had at the beginning of last season. Another shout out to the No Bull Showdown. Like I said, Top Fuel versus Funny Car is essentially a loser's bracket. Anybody who didn't make the race got to compete in that. Ron Capps did not make it. He, again, did not make down the track, smokes the tires, has to back out of it, and just a really struggling weekend for him, considering he was one of the biggest promoters of this event, and he doesn't even make the show and doesn't even get to run in the showdown event, or I guess you should say in the finals. He loses against Blake Torrance. Blake Alexander gets a big win over Brittany Force. That was the big surprise of it all. Blake Alexander, remember, won back in Norwalk, looked really strong throughout the last half of the season, and then gets a really big win. He didn't make the top 8, and he did not make the final round, but to say you got to win over Brittany Force to kick off 2024, I don't care how much money you might have lost in that. That was a big win for them. Steve Torrance barely narrows a win against Chad Green, and then the finals were Chad Green versus Steve Torrance, a rematch from the round 1 that they just had. Steve won the first one, Chad wins the second one, and then an absolute repeat of what happened in 1999 in Bristol. A funny car wins the event. So congratulations to Chad Green on that for winning the $10,000 that came with that prize. Moving on into the next one. In funny car, J.R. Todd suffered an issue in round number 1, did not get to really make a pass, didn't even get to approach the starting line to shut it off, backed it out. His day was done early. Tasca sailed down, like I said in the opening, he sailed down a racetrack, had a very strong pass, looked really unbeatable throughout the entire event. But when it came down to that semifinal pair against Matt Hagan, which is a really, really fun race, considering that those two are going to be some of the top title contenders going into this season, Bob, 3 out of the 4 times, he's unstoppable. Nobody can touch him, but it's always that 4th time that gets him, and it struck once again. They had a fuel line on the manifold brake. It lubed up the tires, and the car shot right towards the center line. He had to back out of it, loses the $250,000 after an historic weekend, considering the fact that he gave up the $10,000 bonus for going number 1 qualifier just to get that 341 mile an hour pass. So not only does he lose the number 1 qualifying spot, he loses the $250,000, but again, you cannot count out that Ford Mustang dragster of Tasca Racing. Matt Hagan advances to the finals. Austin Prock, in an absolutely incredible debut for him, sweeps the hardware all around, goes through Alexis DeJoy round number 1, has to face off against the boss man John Force in the semifinals, takes care of business, and gets himself into the finals against the reigning funny car champion in Austin Prock, scores it big, winning the $250,000, and goes in to Gainesville with a huge head of momentum. And the only thing I have to say is, they just lost that Top Fuel dragster. They might be back to the old ways where you had 3 funny cars and a top fueler, because I don't know how the hell you can throw Austin Prock out of that car to put Robert back in it. I would say build another car, Robert. You're going to need it. And then lastly, in the Top Fuel category, again, just what can you say about it? Round number 1, Tony Schumacher pedals it in the first pair to win it. Clay makes a really strong pass. Like I said, was the only one of the top fuelers that did not have to pedal it to the line. Leah Pruitt fell short in the semifinals in her last full event. She will run the Pep Boys call out in Gainesville, but will not run the full event. That is where Tony will make her debut. She makes it to the semifinals against Doug Coletta in a rematch of what we saw in the Pomona finals last year for the championship. In the same exact lane, same exact turnout, Doug Coletta advances to the final rounds. Clay Milliken and the Cletus McFarland dragster with a lot to show for it. Very strong showing for them, the exact start they need to this season, because if they can run like this at every single event, then don't twist my words on this, Clay Milliken is going to be one of the championship contenders going into this season. An an absolutely strong performance. Every single qualifying round, they looked good except for the day. They figured it out today. If they can get that going into Gainesville, then you're going to have a big threat for that Rick Ware Racing dragster. But today, came up short against Doug Coletta, who has been a thorn in his side for the last few years. It continues to be. That is going to be the one hurdle that he's going to have to face. Doug Coletta takes the win and continues his momentum from his championship, winning $250,000, and continues the exact same streak that he's been on since the start of the countdown last year as the guy to beat in Top Fuel. We are currently right now looking at the Coletta era. So again, got to come down there again. This weekend has just been absolutely incredible. I know I said my criticism last night, but you still can't deny the fact that this was a huge weekend for drag racing. And if this was your first ever drag race, if you're a sprint car fan, a dirt fan, an asphalt fan, any sort, and you've just started watching today, again, if you liked what you saw, you're going to see a lot more of it this season getting into Gainesville and throughout the entire, I believe, 2021 race schedule that we're going to have. NHRA was incredible last year and the year before that, and it's just going to keep growing. And with the competition we're seeing and with the countdown and everything in between, it is what I've been saying. Outside of endurance racing, sports car racing, and prototype racing, it is the must-see event. Those are the two fastest-growing sports in my mind in terms of auto racing, and it is what you cannot afford to miss. So again, in a month's time, you live down in Florida, it's a 5-hour drive north of Bradenton to go to Gainesville. I highly recommend taking the time to go up there. The fans are incredible, the racing is incredible, and the venue is incredible, and you cannot afford to miss it while spending your spring break up in Gainesville for the Gator Nationals. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to follow me on all social media pages down below. I saw you guys' support throughout the weekend. I appreciate you guys giving me the support on Twitter. MightyMack03, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, everywhere. Subscribe to the channel. Share this video so that way everybody can be exposed to the world of drag racing. Because like I said just a few moments ago, you're not going to want to afford to miss it. So again, follow me on social media pages down below. Like, comment, tell me what you thought of the event. Who do you think is going to be the strongest person going into Gainesville? And then continue to just promote the series, because going into Gainesville, this is going to be an incredible season that you cannot afford to miss. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until Gainesville, this was Mighty Mac, and I will see you next time.